Hello and welcome to Good Morning UK, Have Your Say, a Force for Good's mid-morning show coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConaughey. And we're back and we're ringing the bell and we're rocking on the mic while the Fly Girls yell, as Vanilla Ice said so famously so many years ago. And he might also have said that this programme is about the fact that we're British, we love the United Kingdom, and we want to stay together. And that's what we're all about for the next hour. So please do send in your comments. Please do tell us where you're viewing from. We'll love to hear from you. And please do share this broadcast as well. Please do put it around. And we've taken a 2-week, not break as such, but a 2-week hiatus from broadcasting because we wanted to concentrate on writing up our 36-page magazine. And we'll tell you all about how that's going in a minute, viewers. Yes, we're back in the ring to take another swing. And let's tell you how this has all gone then. 2 weeks, got our head down, wrote about 2 or 3 articles a day for our 36-page magazine, and so far we've written 31 of them. And by this time next week we'll have completed the final 5, and then it will be on to graphic design and laying out this stoater of a magazine, which is going to be called Do More Together. It's about how to keep the United Kingdom together, and we're very, very excited about that. It's going to be a great, great piece of work. You changed a bit, nice haircut, thanks. Thanks, I was at somebody's wedding last week, had to get my hair cut for that. So, what's on your mind this morning, folks? You know, while we were writing this 36-page magazine, we were also aware of the wider issues that are going on. You know, this magazine is about keeping the UK together, but we're also aware, of course, about the wider matters that are going on in the United Kingdom at the moment, which cause all of us concern. And while we don't touch on those specifically, and I'm talking about, for example, the transition of the United Kingdom to a biosecurity state, which is a matter of some concern, I should say, for most of us, we don't really touch on that in this magazine. We pretend that's not actually happening at the moment, but we're very much aware of those things in the background and those important concerns which ultimately do affect us all. You know, I was talking to somebody this morning who they went on just a wee break with their family, just a wee 1-week break across the water to Tenerife, and the number of times they've been tested to get there, while they were there and coming back, all of which they've got to pay for. The so-called the Scottish administration has required this person to take 2 tests at £88 each. I mean, as this person was saying to me, it's really just a money spinner now. An absolute money spinner, taking us all for fools, unfortunately. But who's going to stand up against it? In that regard, we look, of course, to our lawmakers and our MSPs. Good morning to Tracy from Bridgeton, lovely part of Glasgow, and Bill watching from the Philippines. Good to see you again, Bill. I know you were watching last time from the Philippines. Adam says, a very pertinent question here, what is our opinion of the SNP going into some kind of formal administration with the Scottish Cabbage Party? I think it's actually a good thing, because for too long the Scottish Cabbage Party have pretended to be environmentally concerned when they're really just using that as an excuse for their Scottish separatism and republicanism. And so if they can go into a formal alliance with the SNP, then hopefully some more people will wake up to realise what the Scottish Cabbages are all about, which is that they're not an ecological party. They're simply a revolutionary party of separatism and republicanism, using the ecological agenda as a guise for their power grab. So hopefully more people will wake up to the corrupt nature of the Scottish Cabbage Party if they are formalising their relationship. And also it's a bit of a deal made with the devil for both sides, because it's not going to end well for either sides as well. So it's actually not a bad thing. You know, it will give them more power in the short term, but hopefully it will be their downfall. That's what we have to believe in. And I do believe that's an excellent question, Adam. Thank you for that, because I did want to speak about that. John says he doesn't do masks, vaccinations or tests. There you go. Catherine says it's an absolute rip-off as well. She had the same problem going to Spain. Yes, this person went to Tenerife. And if a Green MSP gets a minister's position, that's an absolute sinecure. That's them raised from 64,500 a year to, I think it's 95,500 a year. Imagine that, eh? These payments are incredible, utterly incredible. You get made the Scottish National Party Minister for dog licensing and you get £95,000 a year for that. It's absolutely astonishing. The sinecure of Holyrood is incredible, and that's even just for a backbencher. £64,500 to basically get elected to obscurity. You get elected to obscurity. Nobody needs to know your name. Nobody needs to know your face. Nobody needs to know what party you stand for. You can just basically sit there, never say anything in Parliament unless it's already been scripted for you, and rely upon the people in your office to deal with the local paperwork when somebody is complaining in your local constituency. It's basically £64,500 to go into obscurity. I don't know if they've looked for Lord Lucan yet, but he's probably sitting on the backbenches as a Lib Dem MSP, or Labour MSP, or Tory MSP, or for crying out loud, an SNP MSP. I mean, nobody knows who these people are. Like 5 years later, you see them and you're like, what, that person was in the Scottish Parliament? I've never even so much as seen their face, let alone heard of their name. And you just get money for it. It's money for old rope. In fact, old rope would be worth it. This is just money just blown against the wall. So yeah, the Greens are going to enjoy that as well. We're going to talk about Team GB in a minute, Adam. That's a good one. Yeah, what a waste of our money, says Dave. Well, do you know what? Team GB, I just want to talk about that because Adam has brought that up. Let's talk about Team GB. We support Team GB very much. We didn't get excited really this time round because the whole thing was kind of surreal. I mean, from the opening ceremony when all the athletes went out waving to a literally empty stadium, that was just surreal. And then you have the healthiest people in the world, right? These athletes are the healthiest people in the world, all walking around in masks, taking tests for something that they're not going to ever be at risk of because they are literally the healthiest people in the world. They are Olympians. If there's anybody that's at no risk whatsoever, it's Olympians in these teams. So the whole thing just seemed degraded to me to put these healthy young people in a position to pretend that they were at risk of anything, and then to literally masquerade in front of us, giving the impression that there was a risk to them, just struck me as a complete con. So I didn't follow it, and we didn't as an organisation promote it, but we do love the idea of Team GB as a concept. And let me tell you something about Team GB. In 1996, Team GB at the Atlanta Olympics came 36th, okay, behind Ethiopia, behind Algeria, and even behind the Republic of Ireland, okay. We came 36th. It was an absolute national humiliation. But for those of us brought up in the 70s, it was perfectly normal because that's how we had understood British athletics and British Olympian efforts, like just totally dismal. However, somebody, thankfully, at the top decided we need to get this sorted, guys. We're a leading developed world nation. We need to be able to teach people to run in a straight line for 100 metres, better than they're doing it at the moment. We need to teach people all those sorts of things. So they set up something called UK Sport. Now, UK Sport is a Britain-wide organisation that gets funding from the National Lottery. And it basically used the power of the British Treasury and also the power of the British paying into the National Lottery and got it all together and highlighted what sports we can do, what sports we're good at, and pumped money into it and really professionalised them to such an extent that in 4 years later, we didn't come 36th, we came 10th. And then in 2004, we came 10th again. And then in 2008, we came 4th. And then in 2012, which was the London Olympics, we came 3rd. And then in 2016, we came 2nd. Second, beating China and Russia. Second only after the USA. This time around, we still did well. We came 4th after the USA, China and Japan, and we beat Russia. So we're still doing very well. But what Team GB is all about is ensuring that every part of the United Kingdom can have top quality training facilities for its top athletes in a way that, for example, Scotland or Northern Ireland or Wales or arguably even England itself could not necessarily provide. And so it's a great example of how united we are, greater than the sum of our parts. Absolutely. There were 17 Scottish medal winners as well. And that doesn't mean that they would have won those medals outside of Team GB, because outside of Team GB they would not have had the support or the financing or the facilities to train. So it's not a simple matter of saying, oh yeah, Scotland would have had 17 medals anyway. No, all of these medals won, whether by Northern Ireland, Wales, England or Scotland, are only won because we're part of Team GB. And Team GB is such a great concept to take out there in a political sense as well. The idea that united we do much more together and we're greater than the sum of our parts. And tomorrow we'll mention that, because tomorrow, the 12th closing ceremony of the 2012 Olympics. Did anybody else watch Team GB, and what were your thoughts on it? And what about your thoughts on Humza suing a nursery? We've got to talk about that as well, because that is just getting crazy, that is. I agree, Alex, that we should have a Team GB football team. We've got a Team GB women's football team, but the issue, believe it or not, is that the Scottish Football Association and the Welsh Football Association are far too nationalistic and separatist in their orientation, and they argue without a shred of evidence that this is somehow, if there was to be a Team GB, it would somehow threaten their independence as separate football associations, as if they're going to be replaced. You know, as if we're going to say, oh, we're not having a Scottish football team anymore. Utter nonsense, but just sheer arrogance, basically, on behalf of the Welsh and Scottish football associations, that they don't want to cooperate with the man's team for the Olympics. It reflects very, very badly on them. And in fact, that's one of the things that we've mentioned in our 36-page magazine. We've got a whole page devoted to sporting ideas, and one of them is talking about at least the importance of a Team GB men's football team, among other points of view. Humza Yousaf, right? Goodness me, trying to discredit the nursery that his child went to. I find that a very, very interesting issue from all sorts of perspectives. One of the obvious one being, why can't a nursery decide who comes to its nursery anyway? I mean, if I was running a nursery and I heard that Humza Yousaf was wanting to send his children into my nursery, I would be quite concerned about that, I have to say. And I'm talking just generally here, say if somebody doesn't like Humza Yousaf's face, why can't you stop him coming to your nursery? Okay, it's not about the child. Who cares about the child? It's about the person behind the child. Okay, so why can't nurseries decide who they want at their nursery? That just seems to me to be a basic thing. Like, if you're running a bar or a restaurant, you can decide who you want in your restaurant. You can say, get out, mate, I don't like your face, for no other reason. You know, you should be allowed to do that if we live in a free country. One should not have to be compelled to serve somebody if you don't like that person. Where do you hear that anymore? Nobody says that anymore. But you should be able to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's your business, for crying out loud. Anyway, we've got laws where you're compelled to have to, apparently, allow Humza Yousaf in wherever he wants to go. So There's absolutely no evidence, however, that he was even discriminated against anyway. So we want to make that clear also. He's just imagining it. He's just imagining that he's been discriminated against, I have no doubt. Anyway, it'll all come out because he's served some kind of court order about this. And he's an extremely strange man because he put up a photograph of his 2-year-old sleeping in a cot saying, I'm sorry that, it was just a terrible thing he was saying. It was like saying that I'm sorry that, the world is discriminating against you at such an early age and so on. He's putting his child right up there for everybody to see and making it a racial issue when there's no evidence that it even was one. And even if it was, he shouldn't do that to his own child. So what a strange person to do all of that. What a strange man that would do all of that. And what's the explanation? What's the explanation for somebody like him to do that? Well, I think my own theory is that he's got his own hang-ups, right? Because he only got into the SNP back in, I'm just checking, it was 2011, the 2011 election, and he only got in as a regional list MSP because the SNP put him first because they wanted him for various reasons. They wanted him to get in. So nobody actually voted for him back then in 2011. He just got in on the regional list, which is the proportional representation list, because he happened to be first on the SNP list. So he got in not because of any intrinsic merit. And when he got in, he was very young as well at the time. He's been promoted beyond his ability ever since, and I think he knows that. And I think that nervousness about his own ability drives his anger, because he's a very angry man. And it drives him in those ways. And it drives him to endlessly race bait to an unusual and disturbing extent. But hey, that's just what we've got there with him. And time will tell and it'll all come out. But what we should see is him just using this as an issue. And when this issue is finished, he'll invent some other issue, to race bait around. That's just his job, basically. He should get a ministerial position for that specifically. I hope more nurseries tell him no in support of the one he's suing. Well, that's right, nursery solidarity is what's needed there. And anyway, he's only 2 years old. That's an awful young age to send somebody to a nursery, I would have thought, but what do I know about that? Totally, he's in a position of privilege, says Richard, yet he's totally race obsessed. So, yes, this day in British history, today is the 11th of August, and it was on this day in 1897 when one of the world's greatest writers was to be born. One of the world's greatest writers was to be born. And she was born in East Dulwich in London. And it's fair to say she's done her absolute yeoman's work in developing a love of reading in children worldwide. And I'm talking about no other than the Great Britain Enid Blyton, whose books have sold over 600 million copies and have been translated into 90 different languages. And, she gets criticism from the usual suspects who criticise her writing. But the thing that really annoys me about when they criticise her is when the critics say that her writing is like too easy to understand and it's like not challenging enough, as if she's got some kind of duty to change her linguistic and style in order to suit them, as if she's got some kind of duty to change the moral complexity of her novels just to suit some poncy critic, for crying out loud. No, her books played to a formula that really sold and continue to sell very well because they're a mixture of adventure and mystery, and because they always have a satisfying moral conclusion. Those three things are what young children of a certain age need and are attracted to and really enjoy. And she knew that, and that's why her books sell. And the last figure I saw was in 2010, her famous 5 novels, she wrote 21 of them, her famous 5 novels were selling 500,000 a year. Okay, so that's success, absolute success. And I was just doing a wee bit of research on her yesterday, and I like this. I think this is very interesting about how she managed to do this. And I'm quoting here, she says, in a letter to the psychologist Peter McKellar, Blyton describes her writing technique. Listen to this. I shut my eyes for a few minutes with my portable typewriter on my knee. I make my mind a blank and wait, and then, as clearly as I would see real children, my characters stand before me in my mind's eye. The first sentence comes straight into my mind. I don't have to think of it. I don't have to think of anything. And in another letter, she describes how in just 5 days she wrote a 60,000 word novel. And she did it, she says, by listening to what she refers to as her, quote, undermind, which she contrasted with her, quote, upper conscious mind. And her daughter recalls that Enid, quote, never knew where her stories came from, but she used to talk about them coming from her mind's eye. I think that's really mystical and interesting. And it says to me she had an extremely well developed pineal gland, which people claim is the third eye in the brain. And she probably led quite a healthy life, able to tap into that kind of inner consciousness and just let it flow. And some people can do that. And people in the 1950s, some people believed that she was not writing the books because she was writing so many of them. And that really hurt her, because she did write all of these books. She wasn't employing an army of ghostwriters. She was writing them all herself. So an amazing woman, really. And something I found interesting as well is she was married to a bloke from Ayr, who went to Ayr Academy, who was a soldier in the Royal Highland Fusiliers. She was married to him she had 2 children by him, but it seemed to be a fairly stormy relationship, because I'm sure she would be an interesting character to have to live with. So that ended in divorce, and she was to remarry, and she died aged 71 and she's cremated at Golders Green Crematorium. So Enid Blyton, mystical character in British history, and a woman who's going to make her mark forevermore, and a great Briton. And I don't care about her personal life at all. I just care about what she created for the world, which was astonishing stories on all levels, for all ages of children. So God bless her. Also on this day, on the 11th of August in 1965, the Royal Fleet Review in the Clyde. Now, this was back then when Britain had a very substantial navy. There'd be fleet reviews where a large number of the ships would go into, like, the Clyde or whatever, and the Queen would visit them, and they'd call it a fleet review. Yeah, we're back again. At least you got the sound. You didn't get my face. Richard said, I've read some of the 5 Finder Outers and Dog Various Mysteries, which were better than the famous 5. Okay. Good. All good now. So yeah, the Fleet Review on this day in 1965 in the Clyde. And there must have been people at there. So if you've got pictures of the Fleet Review, it was at Greenock. The Queen was there and there was lots of ships. Please do send your pictures in, because that might be in family heirlooms or whatever, because there's literally only 2 pictures in the whole world on the internet of the 1965 Fleet Review on the Clyde, which was a major thing at the time. So if you've got any, please do send them in. I cannot explain this. It's the strangest thing, but I just want to put it out there. And I looked at these websites, and they're the genuine websites of Australian broadcasting, Canadian broadcasting, and Croatian broadcasting. And on the 29th of July, CBC News, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Organisation, they said Alberta reports 233 new cases of COVID-19. Okay? That's the 29th of July. On Wednesday, the 4th of August, a few days later, Australian broadcasting company New South Wales records 233 local COVID cases, the same number. And then 2 days later, the National News Agency of Croatia reports 233 new coronavirus cases. That's the weirdest thing. And, you know, I've looked into that. These are genuine websites of the genuine broadcasting corporations of Australia, Canada and Croatia, all reporting within 10 days of each other the same number of new cases exactly in their country. I can't explain that. I don't know that, other than to say you couldn't make that up. You couldn't dream that. If I woke up and I said to somebody, you know what, I had a dream last night and I dreamt that Croatia, Australia and Canada on 10 days within each other both had exactly the same strange number of new COVID cases, people would say, Alistair, your dreams are crazy. But that's reality. So how's that explainable? I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not the only one to have put that out there, but I'm putting it out there because that needs an answer. I don't understand that at all. I don't understand that at all. And something else that I want to mention, shall I mention it? Yes, let's do it. Let's do this. Is that, and this does concern me at the moment. I'm going to be kind of serious for a few minutes. But many of us know young people, by which you say 18 and younger. And there is a determination, which again is not understandable, from the authorities worldwide to vaccinate all of these young people. And this is for something that does not pose them any mortal harm. And it's also for something, the consequences of which to their growing bodies are not known to anybody. And there's not a doctor in the world who knows for sure, because it's simply all up in the air at the moment. And the consequences of these things are not going to be known to anybody properly for several years. But what we do know is that the disease itself poses no mortal risk, virtually no mortal risk to any child. Yet the system is trying to get us to vaccinate these children with this vaccine. Now, the Health Service Executive of the Republic of Ireland put out a document last week, basically trying to defend their decision to register vaccination for children aged 12 to 15. And they said in it, it is rare that COVID causes serious illness, hospitalizations or death in children. 1 in 100,000 children who get COVID-19 have to go to hospital. Okay, 1 in 100,000. Let's believe that's their evidence. You keep reading, as I have done. You keep reading side effects in children aged 12 to 15. Vaccines can cause side effects. Blah, blah, blah. Very rarely, some children aged 12 or over develop inflammation of the heart called myocarditis and the outer lining of the heart, pericarditis. The risk of myocarditis is higher in boys after their second dose. Data from the United States estimates that the risk of myocarditis in boys aged 12 to 17 is about 1 in 16,000. Okay? So here is the the Health Service Executive of the Republic of Ireland saying that the risk to COVID in children is 1 in 100,000, but if you get an injection, the risk of getting myocarditis if you're a boy is 1 in 16,000. So why would you take an injection where you're going to be at greater risk of myocarditis than COVID. It makes no sense at all. It makes no sense at all. There is no sense to that. But this is what is being pushed out in the Republic of Ireland, and it is coming our way in the United Kingdom. And what we have to rely upon is men and women of goodwill in our Parliament and in the devolved assemblies who will just raise these matters, and they don't have to be considered to be conspiracy theorists or anything like that, if that's their fear. They just need to point out that, there's no risk to a child from COVID. And what we do know, or rather what we don't know, is what the possible risks, serious or otherwise, might be of the vaccine. So there's literally no point in giving them this vaccine. And in the worst situation, it could be bad for them. We just need somebody to say that. And here in Scotland, we have 129 MSPs. As I've just said earlier, they're on £64,500 and they have a job security until 2026. They have 5-year job security. Even if their party chucks them out, they can sit as an independent until 2026 on £64,500. Now, at that kind of level, you would like to think that there will be some man or some woman of goodwill who will be prepared to stand up and say what I've just said. And if they do that, they will make a name for themselves. And rather than being one of these anonymous backbenchers that we never ever hear about, never ever care about, and never even knew existed, they will actually become somebody. They will be somebody. And they'll be more than somebody. They will be, to many people, a hero. And so I do prevail upon the MSPs. Is there just one of you who will raise those sorts of issues and who will stand for the families of children who do not want this to be happening to us? Is there just one of you? And you've got it easy. You've got £64,500 a year and you've got job security for 5 years. And how many people these days can say that they've got job security for 5 years? Not very many. So, you're a privileged person if you're an MSP. We rely upon you to stand up and represent the people. So please, if any of you are listening, please do that. We need MSPs of integrity who will stand up and say and do these things. So please, that's my message to you out there. That's a good point from Ibrox Park. The Republic of Ireland and the EU are trying to get Northern Ireland to join them in their Vax passport. They want to keep their noses out of our business, that's for sure. Twigman says almost all the political parties and their representatives are cowards. Richard says 64,000 crispy ones in the hand. How many slap-up meals? Yeah, Holyrood is a gravy train. That's for sure. But right now, we are witnessing basically our elected representatives just copping out. It's really troubling, and this is a kind of underlying theme. I don't want to get negative about this, but it is a fact when we look about that we do have trouble being properly represented, and that's something moving forward. And you should also just look at people and say, do you trust that person? Look at the British vaccine minister. Do you trust him? Why would you trust him? Would you buy a used car from him? Last week he was saying he does this thing like you can go along to an amusement park, like Thorpe Park had a pop-up vaccination stall. So just before you go a ride on the Big Dipper or whatever, take this drug and then go flying around at high speed upside down. See how that maybe that mixes it all up in your system. And then the next day it was some nightclub in London which was offering these vaccinations to people before they went dancing and jumping around with lots of alcohol in their body. Never before in the history of humanity has this sort of thing been suggested by the authorities that I'm aware of. Well, I am aware actually that it's been done in the past. I used to be a natural health therapist, and I worked, had my own business in Edinburgh for several years, and I was aware at that time of the extent to which Big Pharma has no morals. Big Pharma, Pharma, has no morals. It's all about the lucre. All about the lucre. And, of course, with this one, they've got a ready-made zillion pound trade where they can just keep pushing out these drugs, so long as governments go along with them. And that's where we have to break the frame. We have to break the frame at the moment, and that's when honest men and women who represent us come forward and attempt to do that. And regardless of what political party they are a member of, let's give them our support if they come along and talk those sorts of brave words. Absolutely. Goodness me. It is Brave New World, essentially. It is Brave New World. As I was saying 2 or 3 weeks ago, I never used to watch science fiction. Now I watch science fiction films as a form of political research to find out what they've got planned for us. I just want to throw out a word here. It's quite a big word, but I just want to throw it out before I go, and it's called, and you want to Google this, Lysenkoism. Lysenkoism. I've been looking into this, and Lysenkoism is the phrase given to science in the service of politics. And it occurs to me that that's exactly what we have got at the moment in our country. It comes from the Soviets, and there was a fellow who it was something to do with agriculture or whatever, but there was one view that was not going to be permitted, and it was only Lysenko's view that was going to be permitted, and it was basically science in the service of politics. And that's what we have right now in this country. It's Lysenkoism. If you take the different scientific view, you do not get heard. In fact, you get banished. You get banished to the proverbial Siberia if you do not take the correct view, whether it's on COVID or whether it's on the new thing which they're trying to push out now, which is the climate panic. Now, you're going to see a lot of this in the coming months and years, but especially in the coming few weeks, because there is the big UN climate crisis conference is going to be held in the British Isles. It's going to be held in Glasgow at the end of October, beginning of November. And so what they're doing is they're really pushing this into everybody's televisions now, is the idea that there's going to be a climate crisis, so that when the UN convention conference in Glasgow comes around at the end of October, you'll all be, yes, let's hope that they've all got plans to sort this out for us. And then they'll come out of that with all sorts of plans, which will be further restrictions on our travel especially, and it will be further new forms of taxation for the system. And that's basically why they're using the climate thing, is a scare tactic in order to bring in different restrictions and different taxes. But it's Lysenkoism, so people who don't have that opinion, such as ourselves or whatever, they'll try to banish us because our science doesn't fit their political agenda. Lysenkoism, science in the service of politics. And that's what is happening in the Western world at the moment. Why are we not allowed to search for the truth about COVID? Amazing article in the Glasgow Herald on the 9th of June, which I haven't had a chance to flag up until now. But as he points out that people are getting banned who have the alternative viewpoints. But I wanted to say it's all going to work out at the end of the day, okay? Because these people are in the wrong and we are in the right. So it will work out at the end of the day. And in the meantime, the best you can do is stay away as much as possible from mainstream media. Teach yourselves about how they can try to nudge you into different forms of behaviour and uplift your own mind and soul in whatever way you can. So uncover what they're doing, unplug from the TV, and uplift yourself. The 3 suggestions made in this book, A State of Fear. And I was speaking to somebody earlier as well, and they said, they haven't watched television for the last 2 weeks and they didn't really know what was going on, and they've never felt better for a long while. And it's so true. It's so true. Because at this stage, basically anything you see on the mainstream media is just going to be a scam. Absolutely. And I don't like saying that, but it's come to that now. Unbelievable. I mean, 18 months of this nonsense. And so it's time that we not just wake up, but also get out of bed. Because people say, oh, people are not awake. Yeah, we are awake, but how many of us are getting out of bed and doing? Up now and be doing, as the old-fashioned phrase has it. Up now and be doing. That's better than wake up, don't you see what's going on? No, up and be doing. Good stuff, folks. It wouldn't be a show if I didn't remind you of our fantastic wee book for the Union, and we do sell several of these every week, and they're what keep us going. So please do that, and look forward to our 36-page magazine, which is coming out, which is going to be a belter. It's going to be a belter. And if you can help us fund that, the best way of doing that is to become a Union supporter. And we'll put the link up there as well for the Union supporters. 00MO says, in general, our MPs do not understand their position. They think they are gods. The sad thing is, too many of us worship the state and the government. God save and steal us for the restoration of liberty. Yeah, because that's one of the great things hitherto about being British, was our love of liberty, which is encapsulated in phrases like Britons never shall be slaves, for example. And people who are sensitive, which is all of our great listeners and supporters, we know that that's being perverted right now. That sentiment is being perverted, and that they're trying to lock us down. And we know that this is anti-British, and it's not part of our character. It's not part of our national traditions, as we've come to at least understand and appreciate them. And so anybody promoting this sort of thing is going against our national character and traditions, and they will have to stop doing that, because it's not British, as they say. It's not British. And as we always say, British is a moral value in itself. That's why we call ourselves a force for good, because it's about conveying a moral virtue to the nation and its national characteristics. Anyway, let's end on a positive note, and the positive note that is we will prevail. The British will prevail, and we will cast away this mentality that is trying to make slaves of us, because it's not in our nature. Britons never shall be slaves, as the Scotsman James Thomson wrote, and as we quote in this book, A Wee Book for the Union. That's a fact, and that will be an eternal fact. So folks, it just remains for me to say we shall be back next Wednesday, and so please do check in there. Please do share this broadcast, and until next Wednesday, God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen. See you next week.